You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitri Vietze. I'm also the CEO and founder of Rock, Paper, Scissors, a music PR firm that specializes in music innovation, music tech, and so forth. And as our Music Tectonics listeners know, we do a lot of online events and in-person events. And along the way, we stumble onto some of you, very cool, innovative people. And that's who we're bringing onto the podcast today, is one of those interesting people who has come along for the ride, has come to Music Tectonics events, and has that innovator mindset. Interestingly, he's an attorney. This is Han Kim. He's an attorney at Sheppard, Mullin in Los Angeles. Han's practice focuses on transactional entertainment matters that span from the cutting-edge intersection of technology and entertainment to traditional entertainment industries. He advises clients on business transactions related to music, television, feature film, podcasts, metaverse, VR, AR, blockchain, NFTs, esports, and games. If you just met him at first, you wouldn't say, "Oh, there's an attorney." You'd say, "This guy's kind of like an entrepreneur." He's a really innovative thinker, and he was just named one of the Billboard top music lawyers by Billboard magazine. Han Kim, congrats and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Yeah, let's dive in. It's super fun. I don't know that we've had an attorney on the podcast before, but let's start off with you. Why are you interested in the music tech space? Why have we found you?
Well, yeah, it starts from, me being in the music industry. Before becoming an attorney, I always wanted to be in the music business. So I really got my feet dirty. And my first experience in the music industry was working for one of the big four K-pop companies called JYP Entertainment back in 2009 or so, when they were trying to break into the music industry. At that time, K-pop wasn't as popular as now. So it was been a kind of an uphill battle, but it was my first opportunity to work in the music industry. And after that, I worked in EMI Capital, a digital sales group, at the cutting edge at that time as well of the intersection when the music has been kind of transforming into the digital world. And after that, I went to NYU Music Business Masters to learn more about the music industry from a bird's eye point of view. And also had opportunities to work at booking agencies and get to learn different sectors of how different industries interact with each other. And after that, I realized that to succeed in the music business, you may have to be tied to a talent. So I was like, I'm going to try my luck and manage some artists. And also to buy a little bit more time, I actually went to law school. I was like, well, music, intellectual property, contracts, I'm sure it's going to be helpful. So that's how I went to law school, while trying to work with artists on a day-to-day basis. So that really kind of gave me a pretty good understanding of how realistic experience on how the music industry works, while also pursuing my legal career. And once I became a lawyer, I realized there's a lot more exciting things happening in the music tech space and a lot of innovation. And of course, I'm happy to do recording agreements, producer agreements all day. I found myself being a lot more excited about creating new business models with entrepreneurs and trying to figure out how to disrupt the industry. So that's kind of how I really got focused in the music tech world. And, Music Tectonics is one of the leading conferences and voices for that. So that's why I naturally gravitated to this.
Nice. Glad you found us. We found you. It is a cool fit. I like to hear that strong kind of like music industry orientation even before you went to law school. Not that you're just opportunistically moving into the music tech space, but it's really kind of in your blood in a sense.
Yeah, of course.
And so we have a lot of these kind of innovative startups, founders listening to the podcast. What are some of the most common challenges that these types of music tech startups have?
So generally, new music tech startups have the difficulty of figuring out who to talk to. Say I want to work with a particular artist, and for my new tech startup, who should I even talk to? And that's also kind of a conundrum because there's so many participants, right? There's the artist, there's the label, there's the publisher, there's the artist, there's the manager, there's the agent. You just need to figure out who to talk to. So I think navigating that industry for different needs, working with a professional consultant or lawyer or someone else that can navigate that, it's really helpful. There's a lot of information online on the different types of licenses that you may require, but it's difficult to sometimes find the right person to talk to. So that's one kind of common challenge that I have. And another one is also convincing the music industry that your disruptive technology is going to be helpful for them. They've been working under a particular framework for decades. And even though your ideas may be completely brilliant and they may be intrigued, changing their kind of day-to-day business habits is going to be very difficult. And it's going to take time to change their perception. And, it will take multiple proof of concepts to really change everyone's habits.
How does that, as an attorney working with startups, what can you do to help make that convincing case? How does that impact the sort of the legal aspect of those contracts or negotiations, relationships?
Right. So for music tech companies, oftentimes we as lawyers are not just really acting as advising on the legal aspects only. We also help with coming up with the business affairs, the business models, and communicating why this is helpful for the music industry. And a lot of the times, based on our prior relationships, and we've done so many deals with these kind of music industry participants, we are able to communicate the benefits in a way that they can understand as well, right? It may not be as apparent to them from the beginning. So we sometimes act as the bridge between the two worlds and communicate and let them convince them that, hey, this is actually going to be helpful in the long run or immediately. So that's, sometimes the role as a lawyer is not just, let me help you at legal risks. It's about creating good business models and advising them on how things worked in the past and how it could be changed within a particular framework.
It's really interesting to think about that because if, the first few times you work with a lawyer might be with contracts or something like that. And at some point you start to realize there's actually a bit of creativity in and I don't mean that in a sense like people are just making up new phrases or whatever, but like in terms of structuring deals, the first time if you're in the music industry, you look at a contract and you look at it and you're like, I have a choice. I either sign this or I don't sign this. It's sign this or the deal's off. You do it a couple times and you start to realize, well, maybe there's some phrases in here we can change. Maybe there's a little more flexibility. So it's cool to hear you talking about even broader, like the actual business model you get to be creative around with helping them understand kind of what's possible there. Yeah,
for sure. I think what's really exciting about working with music tech startups and entrepreneurs is sometimes it's never been done in the music industry before. That's why we're literally coming up from a blank page. We need to come up with all these different provisions that will be applicable to the music industry folks. So that's what's really exciting from my end as a lawyer, working with entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Look, we're going to take a quick break for a special message. And when we come back, I want to dig in a tiny bit more about licensing and when to get started. We'll be right back.
Eleanor here. We're giving you a chance to win a free badge to our October conference in the Los Angeles area. We're using a viral marketing platform built for musicians to activate and reward their fans. This is your chance to try it out as a user and maybe win a prize. Enter the competition at our website, musictectonics.com, and follow the instructions to share our message, follow our socials, and refer your friends. Everything you do will score you points. Earn enough points and you could win a free conference badge or a deep discount. This competition ends Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. Sign up for our Music Tectonics newsletter to find out about future contests and discounts. It's all at musictectonics.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, we're back. Han, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned music licensing earlier in the conversation. When is the best time for startups to think about music licensing?
Well, if you are a business that have music as a core to your, and it's fundamental to your business, you should be thinking about music licensing from the very beginning when you build your business model, right? Just like how you think about different parts of how, distribution, production, music licensing needs to be thought out from the beginning. You may not be thinking about, oh, let me do a blanket license and get all the rights possible right now. That may be financially not feasible, but you need to have a course of map to be like, okay, at this point, I want to be at a certain point where I have certain licenses, or at a certain point, I want to have the entire catalog. But, at the same time, you should be thinking about who's your audience, who's your target customers. Do they listen to all types of music? Maybe they only listen to a particular genre. Maybe that's the case. And if that's so, you should be targeting specific labels and publishers and artists that are active in that space. So you have to be very strategic about your music licensing and think about it from the very beginning of your business.
Again, I'm hearing sort of like this sort of strategic perspective that you have that goes beyond sort of somebody just saying, hey, we need to do these licenses. Can you give us some template contracts so we can get these licenses done? But really thinking through, well, do you need all of them? And the other piece of this that's kind of interesting is it feels like there was a moment in time where new digital or tech models felt like they were kind of threatening to a lot of labels or publishers. And now that streaming has sort of built up this pretty strong base of revenue coming into the industry, it's almost finally unlocked this idea that, well, there could be other creative ways of approaching licensing or licensing music for new purposes that nobody ever saw. So I appreciate hearing that perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. There are several new use cases that has been incredibly, changing of the music industry. One example is Peloton, and how music licensing from that has been, they're definitely an influencer, and it's actually changing people's perception and discovery of new music. Peloton is a firm client, and we do a lot of music licensing work for them. So they're a very exciting client, and there's like a perfect case of how new technology can interact with music and the myriad of issues that come from that.
Earlier you also mentioned, working with big names in terms of talent. What are some considerations that startups should be thinking about if their business rests on having some big names kind of attract users and uses and so forth? What should they be thinking about there?
So when you're working with big talents, you need to understand you're working with a lot of big egos, and you will have to be flexible. And also, at the same time, to gain their respect, you need to know where to hold your ground and stay firm where you have to. If not, the artist team is just going to roll over you, right? So another thing is, it's very dynamic. So don't be too surprised if an artist team pulls the rug out of under you in the 11th hour. That's very possible. You just need to be calm and make sure to deliver the benefits that you're delivering to them and why they should be working with you. I think also something that you need to be thinking about when you're working with big talents, there's also there's many different parties that are working with the artist, and the label, the publisher, the agents, and the managers, and their respective incentives are not completely aligned. So you need to be very strategic and understand the little nuances when discussing and approaching these parties. I think, those are the kind of the big high level things that you should be thinking about.
So if you are kind of set on having certain artist names associated, and I know we're talking very generally because music tech covers, it could be a streaming service. That's like the traditional, like, what's that disruptive model? But now it could be so many other things. It could be a creator platform or a marketplace. It could be a fandom app. It could be, a social video thing. It's kind of hard to answer some of these questions generally speaking. But if you know you want to go out for have a name associated with an app, where do you start? Do you talk to the label? Do you talk to the publisher? Do you talk to managers? Are agents involved? How do you know where to start?
Yeah, as mentioned, I think it's important to understand that these different parties have different incentives and what's important to them. So, but my general recommendation is first start with the manager. The manager is the one who works most closely with the artist, and they're kind of like the quarterback where they communicate with the labels, the publishers, the agents, and the publicists. So the management team is able to actually kind of coordinate different interested parties. And because the incentives are not aligned, they may want different things. But if you heavily rely on the management team to kind of communicate and stress that this is important to them. Also, I think it's very important for you as a music tech startup to understand where that artist stands within that particular label, right? Are they a super high priority artist, or are they mid, or are they not, or just a growing? It will really depend on that to how well you can get these different parties to cooperate with you, and certain interests, points that you want to make sure to deliver can be done based on the priority of the artist to the label or the publishers. So that's something to also be thinking about. And sometimes when you're working with big labels or publishers, artists, like they're a massive company. So you'll have to be smart about who am I talking to and where does this person sit within the organization. If they say yes, is that really a yes, or do they need to go up to a few more senior folks to get approval? So being cognizant about where the particular rep sits within the hierarchy is also important.
Makes a lot of sense. So let's move into kind of the innovation part of this conversation. What are some of the cool things that you're seeing emerge right now that get you excited?
Well, yeah, one of the cool things that has been incredibly exciting was Amaze VR, which is also a music Tectonic friend.
Yes.
And they are a immersive VR concert producers, where they work with high level talents to do 4 to 5 songs and create an incredible VR concert experience. What's cool about them is that they've able to partner with theater chains such as AMC to have an actual live immersive experience. So just a couple of weeks ago, I went to AMC and was able to experience the Megan Thee Stallion VR concert, which was incredible. It was just, we've been working on that project for years, and then to see it finally come to life has been such an incredible experience. So so that was one good use case of collaborating with a very high level talent, Megan Thee Stallion. And we had to work with the label, the management, the publishers to clear all the rights and get everyone to come to see this vision. And Amaze VR this is a completely new use case of music. It's not exactly a live concert. It's something that's complementary in many ways to the live industry. Working on that project has been very rewarding, and being able to see that has been incredible.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, that tour in theaters is going on right now. It goes currently through early July and hits several major markets. I think we still have Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Miami, DC, New York, maybe a couple others that are still coming up, so people can have that experience. I think you go in the theater, they hand out headsets, there's stuff on the screen, and there's stuff on the headset, there's some interactivity, and they're building a whole new model. So in terms of how to experience music and what that format is in the end too. What else is emerging that gets you excited?
For now, I think there's a lot of innovation trying to fix the problems of the live touring business. Mm-hmm. And especially now that fans are so much more connected to their artists, that through social media and other means, that there could be many technologies and platforms that be created that could help the process of making sure live shows are done well without. It's a risky business, as you may know, where many of the times the promoters need to put up a lot of money up front and just make hope for the best of the ticket sales out. But I think there's a lot of innovations that are happening now that are allowing people to reduce the risk, but also increase the pie. So I think that's one of the real space that I'm seeing a lot more exciting things happening, especially now after, post-pandemic. People are trying to figure out how best to do this, navigate this business without losing so much money.
Are you talking about actual contracts for performance? There's a shift there, or are you talking about live streaming, or what do you mean?
Well, it's with how to, structure tours, right? Giving tools for management and agents to structure touring in a way that is less risky for all parties and increasing the pie. So there are businesses now out there that are trying to solve those issues by bringing the fans into the process earlier, right? Right now, the fans are very much outside. They buy a ticket once it's is announced, but with the social interactivities and connections that that are happening now, they're trying to involve these fans earlier in the process, which ultimately increases the pie and reduces the risk for everyone.
I love it. We haven't had many people come on to the podcast to talk about evolutions that are post-pandemic in the live touring area, other than we did a lot about live streaming throughout the pandemic, but other than to say, hey, touring's coming back like never before, and there's a little bit of concern that maybe people have too much choice and ticket sales, there's this stop-go mentality that's happening post-pandemic. Super intriguing to hear about what you're talking about with that actual deal structure changing and bringing fans into the sort of risk rewards equation.
Right. So I think there's a lot of innovation that could happen there. But again, here, the business has been operating in a certain structure for decades. It will be interesting to see how these companies are able to, really change the perception and business practices, and being part of that conversation and strategizing with tech entrepreneurs has been, it's been an exciting kind of discussion.
I love it. I mean, since we do organize a conference, we do take some risk when we book speakers and book venues and so forth. We lived through it first with our brush fires. Our first year, we had to move our venue within 24 hours. Luckily, the venue we booked was really cool about it, and we were able to just move over to another hotel. And of course, during the pandemic, we had another hotel booked, and so we know about those risks. We haven't done like a crowdfunding campaign to sell tickets, which would be kind of an interesting model. But now you got me thinking about lots of possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are ways to reduce risks, but in the right way. And that companies need to be really cognizant about not only industry people, but how the fans are perceiving whatever tech that you're presenting to them. So, yeah.
Any other emerging things before we take another quick break that you've been thinking about? Because I love hearing your perspective is really interesting. A, you're on the other side of the country from me. B, you're in a different sector of the music industry. Were there more emerging things you wanted to bring up?
Well, yeah. For me right now, a big focus is trying to figure out how music licensing I think a lot of companies are coming up with catalogs that are free to license to a lot of kind of these tech companies or licensors to creating content. So there's a lot more activities there where people are trying to make catalogs available, music available for these folks, because music licensing has always been a difficult thing. It's been great for lawyers to make, be in between and try to solve it for people. But I think it's, certain times, like I don't think a lawyer should be involved. I think the process should be a little bit more streamlined. So I think there's a lot of tech companies trying to solve that issue of music licensing and all the headaches that surround it.
It's crazy how complicated it has been, and partly I think there was just resistance, right? There was just like, if we do these fractions of pennies, is it going to add up to enough? Are we going to kind of lose control of the brand of how these artists and songwriters' music's going to be used? And now I think everyone realizes there's the possibilities there, but there's still a lot of friction that still could be removed. Like, how much of a catalog, or how do you use that catalog? What have we granted the license to, or how do we ingest the catalog in the way that you need it? Whether it's for, like you mentioned, VR or gaming or sync, or for STEM use somehow, or remixes. Like, every single one of those things has different implications.
Yeah, for sure. And siphoning that and going through the different bundle of rights that an artist has and making sure both parties feel comfortable is a difficult balance to make.
Awesome. All right. Like I said, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we get back, Han, I want to get sci-fi. We'll be right back.
Does your company belong at the center of the conversation about music, tech, and innovation? Listen, you should consider sponsoring the Music Tectonics Conference. It takes place in person, October 25th through the 27th, 2022, in the Music Tech Hub of Los Angeles. Top-tier sponsorships are selling fast, but we still have a spot for you, whether your business is a hungry startup or an industry leader already. Every sponsorship level comes with an exhibitor booth at the Loews Santa Monica Beach Hotel on October 26th, the main conference hub for keynotes and panels. Your company will be at this epicenter of music, tech, and innovation throughout the event. That's just one perk of being a sponsor at Music Tectonics. You could be a guest on this podcast or even play a role in conference programming. Interested? Let's talk. Go to musictectonics.com to start the conversation with our contact form. And now, back to the show.
All right, we're back. And like I said, Han, I make our guests do this. We want to get sci-fi. So what I mean by that, Han, is if you kind of project out forward, we talked about some emerging things before the break, but now let's talk a little bit future forward. What are the things that you're seeing that are coming out with even a stronger, like, indeterminate future that kind of are maybe paving the path for future licensing models or future agreements or ways in which music's getting engaged? Where are you going 5 to 10 years from now, Han?
I am very much thinking about and working on various projects that is really geared towards the future now, and that is kind of immersive communication, immersive experiences in the metaverse or the different metaverses, and that all ties into the concept of NFTs. And really, right now, I am very much bullish in that world. And to me, I think a lot more people are thinking about it and talking about it right now with, Facebook's name change and a lot of kind of momentum from tech companies providing hardware. So this immersive experience can be possible. But the real implications of these are just super fascinating for me, where, I think we should explore more.
It's interesting when you say metaverse and then metaverses. It's interesting because I've seen a lot of conversation online. There seem to be some perspectives that there will only be one metaverse and that somehow everything is going to connect up to the single metaverse. But I so far what I've seen is people building like their own metaverse ecosystems, and they don't necessarily connect, but you still have the same, I mean, it's not interconnected, but you still have a different sort of reality sort of experience. Like when we did Music Tectonics inside we basically rented a metaverse venue, you still have that experience of being an avatar, of having a different sense of place, a sense of there-ness without actually leaving the home or the office, but then you feel like you've been somewhere. So to me, it still, quote, counts, right? It's not, even though it's not interconnected the way some people say. Do you think there will ultimately be a single metaverse that everything connects to, or do you think there's going to continue to be like multiple systems?
Yeah, I think the the concept of interoperability of different metaverses is definitely a hot topic right now. I think the financial incentive structures of different companies make it slightly difficult for the interoperability to come to life in the near future. But I think over time, once it becomes the market playing field reduces to few folks, right? There's going to be few players in there. Maybe these different metaverses can come together and be like, hey, let's connect our systems so it'll make sense. I mean, the one big reason that's preventing that is different metaverse platform owners want to control that and keep it within their control because they can charge platform fees on various transactions within that particular metaverse. And if you're able to move things out, that means you're taking value out of your particular metaverse. And that's something that some companies may be against their self-interest to let that happen. But over time, I think people will demand that, and we'll see how it plays out. But obviously, if you buy fancy Nike shoes in one metaverse, you definitely want to be able to use that somewhere else. And because does that mean you have to buy it again here in a new metaverse? I mean, that just seems like against, and that just seems wrong, right?
I've mentioned this. It's kind of like you go to an amphitheater and you see a show and you buy a T-shirt, and when you leave, you have to hang it up, and you can't use it again until you come back to the amphitheater. That's not fair, really. That shouldn't be the case. So I think people will demand some type of interoperability, or I think we've seen some different metaverses kind of collaborating, saying like, hey, if you buy it from this source, you can also use it here, and we'll honor that in our platform. So I think there's some instances already happening. So we'll see how that goes. And to distinguish, you mentioned NFTs as well, which don't necessarily have to be within a metaverse, but that interoperability could be powered by NFTs, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, the reason why I said NFTs are relevant to the metaverse is because NFTs are cryptographically unique, that it can function as a certificate of ownership. And once you can independently verify that you own a particular in-metaverse item, commerce is possible. I can buy that from you and buy that NFT and just say, oh, I for certain know that I'm buying a particular in-metaverse item. So I think NFTs are very important to the metaverse context because it allows commerce to happen in a bit more with certainty, right? So like, how do you know if you buy something from someone that's going to be the particular item that we're talking about? The NFTs kind of provide that solution by saying, hey, here's a certificate of ownership. And if you buy this, you buy this in metaverse items. So yeah, that's kind of how I think NFTs relate to metaverse and the metaverse, and specifically in the music context. I think the most exciting thing is, hey, in a live concert, at most you can see like 100,000 to 300,000 over a couple weekends. But once you have concerts in the metaverse, you've seen millions of people show up to a particular concert. Like I think in Travis Scott, it was north of 20 million people seeing the Epic Games, Fortnite concert, right? Which to me means so much more opportunities, so much more ways to connect with different folks at the same time. And I think music industry is also, I'm very open to it, and you can see a lot more concerts happening in there, which leads to so many various music licensing issues. And I think the music industry is starting to figure that out, and we've seen various concerts that already happened.
I like that you bring it to a point of sort of like removing friction, that once you create these like metaverse experiences, it's opening up to more opportunity. And I mean, like, to go full circle from your comment about the live music industry, creativity around risk, there can be a lot less risk in a digital environment. Like once you get it sort of scalable, you can remove some of the risk. It's not the same experience necessarily, but then again, maybe people want a different experience too. But I like that you're focused on that increase of access in how you think about it as well. So before we leave the NFT conversation. Just yesterday, I was talking to a group of people, and someone referred to it as the kind of the Wild West of the music industry right now. So does that mean that there's going to be some kind of mismatched expectations between sellers and buyers or partners, or does it just mean there's a lot of creativity out there?
Yeah, I think something to understand about specifically around NFTs is just because you own an NFT, which is a token, doesn't mean that you own the underlying asset that represents the NFT, right? So you can represent just because generally what happens is, the NFT holder gets a certain limited license with respect to the underlying asset, which in this case, digital asset is a music file or other utilities that come with it. So when you say you own an NFT, doesn't necessarily mean that you own that music. It means that you have certain rights related to the underlying music. So that's something that you need to kind of understand. And, also music rights holders need to be very cognizant of that and be careful when you draft your license agreement when you mint a particular NFT.
Gotcha. So you're really talking about IP at that point. Like you think you're buying something, but being really clear about what you're buying.
Yeah, exactly. And most likely you're getting a certain license to it that maybe you get some profit participation, which, runs afoul of securities laws. And there's a lot of difficulties and legal concepts to think about. But mostly, you get it for certain non-commercial use, for personal use, and you can do certain things with it, but you don't get the full pie copyright. But maybe you can. Maybe you could also. Maybe an artist chooses that, hey, like if you own this NFT, you actually own the entire copyright set, and that's the artist's choice. So, from the artist team's perspective, you need to be smart about what kind of licenses you're granting.
Nice. So in this whole sci-fi world, we talked about a bunch of different things. Is there anything else that startups should be thinking about that they might not realize as all this new methods of commerce, licensing, all that kind of stuff? What else should they be thinking about that they might not realize right out of the gate?
Well, just like any industry, I think the music industry is very much a people's business. You should be really going out there and meet different industry players to develop a relationship and a reputation. So even if you have the greatest idea and the most revolutionary idea, if you can't connect with people in the music industry on a personal level, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be as easy. So I think that's something that you should be thinking about fundamentally when all these cool things are happening. Like you need to be getting out there, talking to people and trying to connect.
Hey, I love it. I knew there was a reason that we connected and got you on the podcast. That's the perfect reason why people should come to the Music Tectonics conference in LA in October.
Exactly. So yeah, just come out here. I'm here, so I'm definitely going to be there. So let's try to connect and build the future together.
Awesome, Han. It's been a blast. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned a ton. I got some insights into your thinking, and I love how accessible you make it. I don't feel like I'm talking to somebody that I have to speak another legal language with or anything. So that was super, super helpful. Han Kim, he's an attorney at Sheppard Mullin in LA. Again, he was just named Billboard top music lawyer. Congrats on that, Han, and great having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know you can dig deeper into all our episodes with the show notes at musictectonics.com? While you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference, sign up for our newsletter to get updates, or get the Music Tectonics app for music tech news. Everything we do explores seismic shifts that shake up music and technology the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and find me, Dmitri Vietze, if you can spell it, on LinkedIn. Bye-bye!
You're listening to Music Tectonics.